Is NIO going to come in with another monthly delivery record in June? Did NIO and management from NIO intentionally sort of maybe come in with a conservative guidance number so they could surprise and beat it for the second quarter? And what about NIO with their demand versus their sales and production capacity? Is this a problem or not? This is what I want to unpack in this video. I'm starting with the insurance registration data because very early on in May, we had some indicators that told us we could see a monthly delivery record for NIO in May. And that's one of the reasons I've been tracking this data for over 2 years so that we can have a sense of when things shift or have some kind of early indicators compared to what most folks are looking at and aware of. That's exactly why in this upcoming week, Tuesday, we'll probably get some data and I'll be doing a little comparison. We'll be discussing it and the likelihood, even at this early stage. And to be clear, this is June 8th as I'm recording this, but I think we'll already have an indicator in this next week of how the June delivery numbers are going to look for NIO. So stay tuned or come on back. But let's now shift over and talk. This is from the first quarter earnings. And what I'm going to do, I think, is cover one or two different topics and sort of work them through one video at a time, because there are a few different things I want to talk about from this recent earnings, the first quarter earnings. So the kind of theme in this one is going to be production, deliveries, demand, and that whole kind of overview. The guidance that was put out by NIO, deliveries of vehicles in the second quarter to be between 54,000 and 56,000 units. Now, those who are here on the channel and familiar with me know that I also have a monthly playlist, and we've been tracking that data. NIO already has over 36,000 deliveries with just the month of June remaining. So if they come in with a June monthly record or even just get to the 20,000 mark, they will have a quarterly record of 56,000 or more. Possibly, I think they could surprise and come in with even better numbers. But let's just wait, track the data as we get it, and have ongoing discussion. Hopefully, we'll have the earliest indicators out there from this data we've been tracking for so long. This is the first piece from the transcript that I want to get into. And this is important in my mind because we got the validation that I was hoping we would get from William Lee. This goes back to the third quarter. And I talked about this heading into this earnings. So if we go back to the third quarter last year, William Lee talked about how they should have gotten sales personnel hired earlier to help with the sales teams. And this is what he said in this first quarter earnings. In the second half of last year, we realized that we didn't have enough sales capacities and capabilities, which means we didn't have enough point of sale or the salespersons on team. In that case, we started to build our sales capacity and capabilities. And starting March, April this year, we are seeing more and more qualified fellows contribute to sales and also orders to the company. So this is part of the reason we saw the uptick in volume for NIO on demand and with the deliveries. This is consistent with what he had said last year in that third quarter earnings when he said essentially, hey, we hired some people, but it's going to take them about 6 months. And that put him into this time frame of kind of the second quarter-ish for 2024. And that's one of the things I was kind of waiting and watching for. First quarter of 2024, I expected to be the lowest on the delivery side for NIO. So let's see if they come in with a new record on the quarterly numbers for deliveries. And we'll come back to this other piece in just a second, but I want to move over now to another piece because this ties in with one of the other reasons that NIO not only has good prospects for the numbers to continue to go up over time, and I'm talking about the deliveries for the main NIO brand. This is also a piece of it, but we also maybe have a little bit of a potential challenge or issue, obstacle for NIO to overcome, and that is the 64 delivery centers, possibly. Shout out to the guys on Blue Sky Coming, the podcast. It's Mr. P and Eric G and Ting. They were just talking about it this recent week. I don't always get to the podcast, but I sure appreciate what they share. And one of the things they're talking about was how the 64 delivery centers might not be sufficient, or perhaps maybe what we've got is, in the case of NIO, there's too much congestion with some of the delivery centers, and so they can't get everything out. More on that in a little bit. But this is also about the charging, the swapping network. And as NIO becomes better known, and you'll see it at the bottom of the screen, I've got the first major growth phase for NIO. This is a part of it. NIO has to be known. They have to be recognized and acknowledged for what they're doing with upgradable, swappable battery technology. And this is part of the build out of the infrastructure, the power swap stations, and the brand being known and recognized. And so this is one of the additional points that Mr. EQ William Lee talked about in that earnings call. We are deploying and opening up more power swap stations. More and more people are also getting to know and starting to recognize the value of chargeable, swappable, and upgradable solutions. And also, we have a pretty stable residual value on our used vehicles. These are things that I thought would take time, and I think we still have to wait. This is a patience and discipline type of play in my mind. Some folks might not like that, but that's part of the long-term view and the value that this company has. The value proposition can continue to grow for NIO. And yes, we can see bigger and better numbers on the sales side of things as people, let's say, go back on holiday and see that there is this other option of swapping your battery at these power swap stations. So as this build out of infrastructure with NIO and the power swap stations continues, I think more eyes will become attracted to it, and more people will become aware of, as is, the point of the market awareness, the brand of NIO and what they have, what they offer, especially with their vehicles and the battery swappable capabilities. So how about this now? This is where we talk about the demand, and I've seen people discussing this, debating this. William Lee says, this is actually a little bit of a problem, a little bit of a headache. He said, in May, actually, the order demand has exceeded our production capacity. Now, hang on a second, because I do think there's an explanation. I think he kind of hints at it down below. So we'll get to that in a minute. He says, the actual deliveries we achieved in May basically means the maximum vehicle or maximum number of vehicles we can produce for that month. Now, I want to pause here for a second, because with NIO, my understanding was from earlier on that factory one would have the capacity to go up to 240,000 and maybe 300,000, but the single shift production capacity was perhaps only about 150,000 vehicles. And so if they've only been operating with single shifts from there, and then factory two, which as I see it, there's NIO Park, you've got 3 phases to NIO Park. The first phase, if that's the one that's in operation for factory two, and that also has a capacity for 300,000, but that's double shifts, and they've only been operating single shifts, then obviously those numbers change a lot. And so I do think that is in play. Also, if phase two out of NIO Park is going to be focused on the Envo, then that may not be up to or operating at full capacity just yet. So not knowing some of those things, and I'll ask for help on this. Some of the people who have actually been to factory two, to NIO Park, or maybe Jason, you or Marcel have some insight on this. I would appreciate any feedback from folks who may be able to help kind of clarify this. But it seems to me, especially as we move down here to the bottom piece, we may also arrange dual shifts in certain production lines or sections to fulfill the demand of both brands and products. We've talked about not just NIO now, but also Envo. And so the fact that he referenced this makes me think they have not been operating, certainly at least not consistently with double shifts. So I do think they have more capacity. They can make some adjustments, some changes. But back to the delivery point, that, if only 64 delivery centers are active and there's heavy congestion with some of them, we did kind of see this late in May where it was a bit of an issue at some of the locations. And so let's see what happens. I think the clearest, simplest indicator is actually going to be this upcoming week in the weekly numbers, the insurance registration data, because typically over the course of time throughout a month, typically the beginning of a month are the lowest numbers on the insurance registration side. And I'm just curious if NIO can't change this cadence a little bit, maybe even change and do more double shifts. Maybe they've already started that, and maybe we'll see that play out here in the weekly numbers. That's one of the reasons that I've been tracking the data, just big kind of concept overview and wanting to have a sense of what things look like. NIO seems beautifully positioned in a lot of ways, but I do think this remains a long-term play, and it could take a few more years even before this company is truly recognized globally and acknowledged. So for me, nothing really changes. I'll just continue to share the data and offer things as I see them. And I will come back with more content specifically related to the first quarter earnings, but I think the cleanest way for me to do this is to sort of pick one topic or one piece that I'm kind of looking at and digging into, and then we'll just talk about it so that I can have a few different videos and kind of keep things clean and separate, if that makes sense. Thanks. Have a great day. I'll see you all again very soon.